Once upon a time, the US and India barely spoke the same geopolitical language. During the Cold War, India chose non-alignment, keeping its distance from both the US and the Soviet Union. And when India tested nuclear weapons in 1998, Washington slapped sanctions, and relations hit rock bottom. But fast forward to the 21st century, and something changed. Dramatically. Nothing unites old frenemies like a giant neighbor growing so fast. It's basically building islands, exporting TikToks, and rewriting the world order before lunch. Nerdy is right. By the mid-2000s, both countries realized they had a common rival, China. And by the 2016, India had become a major defense partner of the US. This wasn't just a handshake. It was backed by real deals. Strategic military agreements like Limoa, Kamkasa, and Bika. They gave two nations access to each other's military bases, real-time intelligence, and secure communications. But it's not just the US making moves. India's ties with Europe, long diplomatic but mostly symbolic, began to deepen. The relationship dates back to 1962, but only recently have Brussels and New Delhi started seeing each other as a true strategic partners. Trade, tech, and defense are now central to this long overdue partnership. Hit that like button, subscribe, and let's find out how far this alliance between India and the West can really go. The world's most populous country is no longer just a demographic giant. It's an economic rocket ship.
India is now the fastest growing major economy on Earth, clocking in annual growth rates of 6 to 7%. Compare that to China's cooling engine, now sputtering around 3 to 4%, and the contrast is clear. One is rising, the other is slowing.
Well, that's true, but please don't forget about the low base effect.
Okay, but what gives India an edge? Youth. With a median age under 30, it boasts a workforce full of ambition and energy. Add to that a booming tech sector, over 100 unicorn startups, and one of the world's most advanced digital payment systems, and you've got a recipe for long-term momentum. The West is watching and investing. The US and India now trade over $191 billion worth of goods and services. Europe's catching up fast, with a $130 billion in trade and more than 6,000 European companies operating across India. From semiconductors to solar panels, Western firms are betting big on India's potential to become not just the next China, but something entirely new, a democratic economic powerhouse.
As Beijing's miracle model loses steam, New Delhi's moment is just beginning. The ocean is the new frontline, and India is standing guard.
At the heart of the Indo-Pacific, India controls vital sea lanes that carry 2/3 of global oil and 1/3 of global trade. Its Security and Growth for All in the Region initiative isn't just a slogan. It's a strategic blueprint to expand India's naval presence, protect its maritime borders, and offer smaller nations an alternative to China's dominance. The US and EU are on the same page. They see India not just as a partner, but as a pivotal power in keeping the world's most critical trade routes open and secure. Freedom of navigation, countering piracy, and resisting coercion, these are shared goals. Meanwhile, China is extending its reach with the Belt and Road Initiative, building ports, pipelines, and railways across Asia and Africa. But many of these projects come with a catch: mounting debt and lost sovereignty. India offers a different approach: regional partnerships without the strings attached.
In the battle for influence across the Indo-Pacific, India is no longer a bystander. It's a gatekeeper, a power broker, and a rising counterweight to Beijing. When the world's largest democracy teams up with the West's oldest ones, it sounds like a perfect match, at least on paper.
Washington and Brussels love to cite shared democratic values as the foundation of their ties with India. It's an appealing narrative: open societies, pluralism, rule of law. But reality is more complicated. In recent years, India has drawn criticism for shrinking press freedom, curbing dissent, and tilting toward majoritarian politics. Human rights groups call it democratic backsliding. Western governments? They've mostly looked the other way. Because values aren't the only thing at stake, interests are. India plays a unique role. It's not aligned with the West, but it's not aligned against it either. In global summits, India walks its own path, avoiding military alliances, rejecting Western pressure on sanctions, and still buying oil from sanctioned states like Russia. Yet it's also deepening defense ties with the US, opening markets to European firms, and playing a stabilizing role in the Indo-Pacific.
For the West, India is too big to isolate, too important to alienate, and too valuable to ignore. It looks like a partnership driven less by ideals and more by realpolitik. What do you think? Is India-Western alliance truly about shared democracy or just a strategic convenience? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Russia's invasion of Ukraine forced Europe to confront the risk of relying on authoritarian powers, and India soon stood out as a promising alternative.
Brussels' honeymoon with Beijing has cooled dramatically. China's use of economic coercion, its authoritarian stance on human rights, and its growing closeness to Moscow have made it harder for European leaders to ignore the risks. The message is clear. Europe is done being naive. In 2021, the EU and India revived stalled trade talks and launched the Trade and Technology Council, mirroring the EU-US framework. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen's high-profile visit to New Delhi cemented a vision of deeper collaboration, especially in green energy, semiconductors, and digital innovation. With over 6,000 European companies operating in India, the EU sees it as a more stable and predictable partner.
Unlike China, India aligns, at least partially, with Europe's values, offers a large democratic market, and doesn't pose a systemic challenge to the Western-led order. For the EU, this pivot isn't just about profit, it's about strategic security in an increasingly uncertain world. While India and the West are drawing closer, India isn't picking a team, it's playing its own game.
For decades, New Delhi has embraced a foreign policy of strategic autonomy. It maintains strong defense ties with Russia, even amid Western sanctions. It's a leading voice in BRICS, works with China on multilateral platforms, and still attends summits alongside the very powers the West wants to isolate. Then there's economic interdependence. Despite border tensions and mistrust, India imports vast amounts of electronics, pharmaceutical ingredients, and solar tech from China, the very rival it's expected to help counterbalance. And while India cooperates with the US in defense, it refuses to join binding military alliances or commit troops to Western interventions. This isn't indecision. It's calculation. India wants a multipolar world, not a new Cold War with new camps. It sees partnerships as transactional, not ideological.
So while the West views India as a potential counterweight to China, India sees itself as a pole of power and its own right, not a pawn in someone else's strategy, and that's where things get complicated. Let's be clear, India isn't a China 2.0. It's not trying to mimic Beijing's economic model or authoritarian efficiency. Instead, India offers something different, a democratic, multi-aligned, and increasingly capable power that can diversify global supply chains and balance Beijing's influence. True, India won't single-handedly take over China's role as the world's factory, but it can fill critical gaps in tech, manufacturing, and services, especially for countries wary of China's dominance. Western companies are already betting big, not to relocate entirely, but to de-risk and diversify. The key? Respecting India's autonomy. New Delhi won't sign up for a US-led bloc or become the EU's junior partner, but it's open to deep cooperation in cybersecurity, AI, semiconductors, maritime security, and defending a rules-based global order. This isn't about one country replacing another, it's about building a new kind of partnership, flexible, interest-driven, and resilient enough to outmaneuver authoritarian models. But will this new alliance truly reshape global power, or will competing agendas pull it apart? Share your thoughts in the comments. Also make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video, so you won't miss what's coming next. Catch you in the next one.